The roots of conflict. Vietnam was temporarily divided. These tactics had horrific side effects. The result was a growing anti-war movement that images of helicopters evacuating the last Americans. The experience shaped future policies and military strategies. The Vietnam War may be history. The Vietnam War was not just a conflict. It was a collision of ideals, cultures, and superpowers that left a scar on history. At the heart of this complex struggle lay Vietnam, a small country that became the battleground for a global confrontation between communism and capitalism. The roots of conflict were planted long before the war. Vietnam had been a French colony since the 19th century, and the desire for independence ran deep. Enter Ho Chi Minh, a revolutionary inspired by ideals of self-determination, who emerged as a unifying figure. His vision galvanized the Vietnamese people, sparking a struggle for independence that would shape the nation's destiny. As the French clung to power, tensions grew. Ho Chi Minh's revolutionary movement, the Viet Minh, mobilized the people, igniting the First Indochina War. This conflict laid the foundation for what would become a global struggle as Ho's communist ideology clashed with Western values. The Vietnamese dream of freedom was becoming entangled with the ideological battle of the Cold War. After the French were defeated in 1954, Vietnam was temporarily divided, the North under communist rule, led by Ho Chi Minh, and the South aligned with Western interests. The domino theory took hold in the United States, as leaders feared that if Vietnam fell to communism, the rest of Southeast Asia would follow suit. And so began the seeds of American involvement. Initially, the U.S. provided only military advisors and financial aid. But by the early 1960s, as South Vietnam's government struggled to maintain control, American leaders were drawn deeper into the conflict, eventually committing ground troops in 1965. Vietnam soon became America's war. American soldiers arrived to find an enemy adept at guerrilla warfare and a terrain that seemed to resist them at every turn. Jungle ambushes, booby traps, and the elusive Viet Cong tested every soldier's resolve. The frustration of fighting an invisible enemy took a psychological toll on the troops. To counter the guerrilla tactics, the U.S. unleashed an arsenal of air power. Napalm strikes set entire forests ablaze, while Agent Orange was used to defoliate jungles. Though intended to deny the Viet Cong cover, these tactics had horrific side effects, poisoning the land and causing lasting harm to civilians. Back home, the images of burning villages, injured soldiers, and civilian casualties were broadcast into American living rooms. For the first time, people saw the reality of war in vivid detail. The result was a growing anti-war movement that would forever change America. The Tet Offensive of 1968 became a turning point. North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces launched coordinated attacks on cities and bases throughout South Vietnam, including the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. Although ultimately a military defeat for the Communists, the offensive shattered the American public's belief in the war's winnability. With the U.S. reeling, protests erupted across the nation. University campuses became hubs of anti-war sentiment. Students, veterans, and activists called for peace, challenging the government's actions and questioning America's role in Vietnam. Under immense pressure, President Nixon implemented Vietnamization, shifting the responsibility of fighting to the South Vietnamese forces while gradually reducing American troops. But even as peace negotiations unfolded, the war raged on. The Paris Peace Accords were signed in 1973, marking the official end of U.S. involvement. But the ink was barely dry when conflict resumed in full force. North Vietnam, determined to achieve unification, prepared for a final assault on the South. On April 30, 1975, Saigon fell to the North Vietnamese forces. Images of helicopters evacuating the last Americans and desperate civilians scrambling to escape became symbolic of America's defeat and the end of an era in Southeast Asia. The Vietnam War left indelible marks on both sides. For the U.S., the experience shaped future policies and military strategies, casting a shadow on foreign interventions for decades. For Vietnam, the war was a story of resilience and survival, of rebuilding a nation from the ashes. Today, Vietnam stands as a testament to the human spirit. The country has transformed from a war-torn land to a thriving nation, its people united by the scars and strength born from years of struggle. The legacy of the Vietnam War, however, remains a haunting reminder of the costs of conflict, a story that echoes through generations. The Vietnam War may be history, but its stories and lessons remain as relevant as ever. If you found this journey into the past insightful, please like, share, and subscribe. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Should wars like this ever be repeated, or have we learned enough from Vietnam's haunting legacy?